Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here, and this video is going to be my, I suppose now, annual E3 discussion video, where, as I did last year, I'm going to go over primarily my, I suppose, top 10 games / announcements from this year's E3. And, at the start here, I'll just discuss a little bit of my kind of general thoughts on the show, which companies I felt did the best, and then we'll get into the top 10 games. So, overall, if I had to list the main conferences in an order from like best to worst, I'd say probably Nintendo was the best. I'd say probably like Ubisoft was probably second when you really break it down. Then Microsoft, then Sony, then Bethesda. No wait, actually, then EA, then Bethesda. Though the last two are pretty interchangeable. Just because EA's conferences. A lot of the sports games, which I don't mind. Like, I play FIFA every so often, and it's interesting to see how they do attempt to switch things up each year, and that, EA had some good games, Bethesda had some good games, though I only really play, a very select few of their games, and that, I think for me to be really invested in a Bethesda conference, it would have to be them announcing the next Elder Scrolls game, the sequel to Skyrim, basically, one that's not the online game they're doing currently. So yeah, that's kind of my main rundown. The basic thing I'd say would just be that I felt like Nintendo, obviously going last basically among all the big companies, what they got right I think was just that they had the excitement around a new system, that they'd be talking about new Switch games for the first time at an E3, so they had that going for them. They had Mario Odyssey, which I'll talk about later on, to talk about, which they announced they would be talking about, and then they had all these other games. Just because of the sheer kind of how well known all of their characters, all of their properties are, they had so much opportunity to do anything at their conference. So I think there was just a lot of excitement around it, and they got it right. Ubisoft, I think, very much surprised everyone with their conference. Obviously, having Mario and Rabbids was a big thing for them, and I suppose them getting to show it, I suppose more so than Nintendo getting to show that game was a big thing. But then I think they just had a pretty nice blend of games. They had some sports games with Steep. They had the Crew in terms of a racing game, but also that was general driving now seems to be the thing that the new Crew game is going for. And then just overall they got a lot of stuff right, and that I think the new Assassin's Creed actually looks kind of decent. I think it's going to have a similar kind of thing to how Assassin's Creed Black Flag had, where just the gimmick of pirates was a big thing, whereas this one has the gimmick of it's set in ancient Egypt is a big thing. Whereas a lot of the, I suppose, more recent ones were just oh, this one's set in this general time period, but in this country. And okay, the architecture is going to be a little bit different, but it's not the same as how very different it is going to be in ancient Egypt, or how very different the game was because it had pirate ships in it and so on. So I think they got a lot of that stuff right. Microsoft, I think their conference was overall very solid. I just don't feel it had necessarily the huge announcement that people were looking for. I think what it was missing was probably something like a Halo 6 to really just that huge announcement of just something that people were waiting for. So it was just sort of missing that. I think they got a lot of the stuff right about how they showed off the Xbox One X and just making it clear that yes, this is the most powerful console out there, and this is what it can do. And using Forza as the game to show it off was the perfect thing to do. And then the original Xbox backwards compatible was a really good announcement to do, just to kind of really I think get around what I think Sony did wrong this entire E3, in that their conference wasn't bad. I think Microsoft, they didn't have the huge game. It was a lot of just solid announcements, nothing huge. But I think what Microsoft did better than Sony this year was just kind of being more open. Sony had come out, I think, before the conference and pretty much through the conference, basically saying, yeah, we don't care about backwards compatible. No one really uses it. Microsoft then, of course, had the opportunity to double down on that by saying, no, like X amount of people who played Xbox 360 backwards compatible used those games, and now we're actually adding to that. Here's original Xbox games, which are actually very difficult to play now. So that's a really big thing that they did. And then probably the big thing that's going to be like the takeaway and the thing to look out for in the next couple of months is just how this back and forth between basically it's like Psyonix, Sony, and Microsoft goes about cross-network play, primarily based around Rocket League, and the fact that Sony are now the only ones holding it back from basically just all Rocket League being connected and you being able to match up with anyone playing that game. So that was a huge thing, and that like you really saw the tide kind of really turn against Sony after like they were everyone's favorites after like last year's E3 and all the stuff that they showed. But this year, I think a lot of those things they said beforehand, during the show, and are still saying now, have really kind of made people think that's kind of backwards thinking, Sony. Like, what are you doing here? Whereas Microsoft's being very open. We want people to play all these games. Like they're saying the right things for the most part. But yeah, that's my kind of general thoughts on the show overall. But yeah, let's get into some specific games here. So I'll start off with an honorable mention, and that's going to be Need for Speed Payback. This one's coming out November 10th, 2017. And yeah, I think what impressed me about this was that it's Need for Speed, yes, and it has a lot of the typical Need for Speed stuff. But it also has this new element this time around of just the whole like Fast and the Furious motorsport, heist carjacking stuff, of just how they stole that I think it was a Koenigsegg in the demo that they kind of showed off. I think that was really cool. Again, I think a lot of like if I'm really going to make the decision to buy this game is going to depend on how much of that stuff there is in the game, and if it's just like a couple of sequences that are like that, or if there's actually an attempt in the game to make it a bit more general action focused rather than it just being another driving game. I like that they basically brought like takedowns from Burnout properly back into the game now, and that seemed really cool. The only, I suppose, in any way doubts I have about this game are just that from what I saw, like some certain YouTubers who got to play at E3, the handling looks a bit odd. Obviously, I haven't played the game, so I don't know how it actually feels to play. But it looked a little weird when, like, they were turning around a corner and then suddenly, like, just the back end of the car just completely, like, goes crazy sliding out. That, like, it seemed like this weird blend of, like, it seems pretty simulator almost. But then it gets, like, crazy arcadey with the drifting. So I'm wondering how that exactly is. And I definitely want to read more impressions about how exactly the handling was. But, definitely, I like the whole heist aspect of this, and that's definitely, for me, the key gimmick. And then, as I'll talk about with the other driving game I have on my list, another key thing is, of course, what cars are actually going to be in the game. Which brands do they have? Which brands don't they have? Which cars are they making, like, part of, like, DLC packs or not? That's always a big thing. If they don't have any cars you like, do you really want to play the game if you can't drive a car that you like? So, we'll see about that. I suppose the other thing with that as well, they seem to really double down on like how in-depth the customization is, in that you can find these like old kind of almost wrecked cars and really like build them up from like nothing to something really good. So that seems really cool. So yeah, let's jump into my top 10 properly this time. My number 10 is Sonic Forces. Now this game is obviously for Switch. It's Switch, Xbox One, PlayStation 4. I assume PC as well, but I'm not sure. It might not be. But either way, the version I'd be getting would be the Switch version, just because I like the idea of what that system does. You're able to play handheld or on the TV, and for Sonic that seems really cool. So this one, the only date that I think we have is Q4 2017, which is fine. Doesn't seem crazy far off. They just haven't given an exact date yet. And definitely I think this game looks really good. The graphics, this story kind of idea, and for the most part what I've seen of the gameplay actually looks really good. I think my only issue with it is just that I don't get why this is meant to be our kind of modern Sonic game here, but they again feel the need to constantly cram in original Sonic for almost no real reason into this. Like, especially this year, where Sonic Mania is actually coming out, and that is original Sonic. It is almost it's basically going to be the Sonic 4 that people actually wanted. Why are you putting him in this game as well? It feels completely unnecessary, because there are sections with Modern Sonic that also have 2D. And I get those 2D ones for Modern Sonic are a little bit different. But why can't you just have it be Modern Sonic doing the 2D bits as well, rather than having to specify that it's original Sonic doing the 2D bits as well? Just have the gameplay switch from the crazy fast to the more platform orientated one for Modern Sonic, and do that. I don't get why you need to have the other one. I like the idea of the creator character as these kind of action stages using kind of a special power that your created character has. I'm eager to see what the kind of creator looks like and how detailed it is and what exactly you can customize, and potentially if they even bother to characterize that character at all. But yeah, I think that's the only issue for me. Just I don't get why this is our Modern Sonic and they need original Sonic in it when Sonic Mania is coming out as well. I'm going to get Modern Sonic because I'm going to get probably both of these games, because some of the first games I ever played were the original Sonic games on the Mega Drive. Sonic 1, 2, 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and so on. I really like those games, of course. But I also really like Modern Sonic. I love the day stages from Sonic Unleashed, the levels that are like that from Sonic Colors, and so on. I just don't see why, like, it looks like it's going to be like less than half of the game. Why our Modern Sonic gameplay is looking like maybe not even a third of the game. I don't really get why that's the case. But yeah, we'll move on from number 10 to number 9. My number 9 is Forza Motorsport 7. This one's coming out October 3rd, 2017, and in general, I just liked how they showcased this. They used this as the game to properly show off, I suppose, what the Xbox One X is capable of, in that Forza is always a very technically amazing game in terms of the graphics, how they get, like, frame rate is always spot on, and minus their, like, PC ports, the console versions are always, like, just... there's like never really any bugs with it. And so I liked how they used an actual real car announcement to, like, go into the game, in that they announced, you know, this new Porsche, and then they showed the real car plus the car in the game, and I thought it really highlighted just how amazing the graphics are, that, like, you can literally just compare and contrast that, like, there's the real version of the car right there, and then on the big screen is it in the game, and it just looked really good. Of course, you know, it is the 7th Forza game. Like, how much different can it be? The main new thing they seem to be hyping up is just the idea of your kind of driver. You can actually customize them with a different racing suit, racing helmet, and stuff like that. And they obviously are going to have serious ones, but it seems like they're also going to have fun ones, like a kind of tuxedo kind of version and so on. So that could be really fun. But again, it also depends on what cars exactly are in it. So they have a deal with Porsche, so we're going to see a lot of Porsches in this game. I think they also mentioned they have a deal with Nissan, so we should see a lot of them. But again, what are the other brands? Like, I like a lot of the supercar manufacturers, like Ferrari, Lamborghini. Like, are all of those going to be in it, and so on. So I like my kind of sim driving games every now and then. I think Forza 7 is going to be really good, and definitely probably one I will end up getting. So, number 8 on my list is going to be Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. I think that's the full title. And this is obviously Ubisoft's Mario game with Rabbids. And this one's coming out August 29th, 2017 for the Switch. I think this looks really cool. It was obviously leaked prior to the event, prior to E3, but actually getting to see the gameplay here and see that, as everyone's been saying, it seems like it plays like a Mario version of XCOM. Now, I've never played XCOM, but I do get the style of game that it is, and I think that seems really cool just to see Mario characters do that. Seeing just the little animations of the fact that you can move one of your characters onto one of your other characters and have them launch that character even further to get, like, an even bigger kind of movement on your turn. And just the tactics of, like, oh, do you want to, like, go behind cover here, or get an attack in but leave yourself out in the open, and positioning people so that you can do that kind of jump boost movement thing and so on. I think for me, before I properly make a decision on if I'm going to get this game, because I'm very much leaning towards it, I really want to know, I suppose, in terms of the depth of this game. When you get to the end levels, how many characters are on your team? How many characters are there actually in the game that you can choose to have on your team, even if you're limited to maybe 4 or 5? Like, how many Mario characters are there? There's obviously Mario, like Luigi, Peach, Yoshi, and so on, but like, how in-depth are we going here? In that, like, do we only have a couple of Mario characters, or is it mostly Rabbid characters, and so on? They showed off some of the kind of like skill tree type stuff, which seems really cool, in terms of like Luigi has like an attack called, Steely Stare, which like is the whole Mario Kart meme with him. So it seems really fun as well, just that they're really, like, they're not afraid to, I suppose, kind of just have Mario be in this just crazy absurd thing with the Rabbids, and I really like that they're just kind of having a lot of fun with it. Mario has a gun, and we're just joking about that. And Peach has a gun. She's awesome with it. It just seems really, really fun and cool what they're doing with this game. And the gameplay looks surprisingly good, I think. And graphically, I think it looks really cool, but just because it's so colorful. But the only thing is just the depth. How in-depth is this game is the only thing. I'm kind of a little worried it might be a bit too just, there's only 2 or 3 characters versus 2 or 3 characters in the... There's not as much strategy as you would actually think. Number 7 on my list is going to be Spider-Man PlayStation 4, which is coming out 2018. I don't think they said like an exact time. I'm assuming mid to late 2018, probably late, just based on like this looks like it's basically almost the most hyped game of the show in a way. So I assume they're going to take their time with this one to get it right. But probably showing off the gameplay for the first time here, it really looks like they've got it all right. There was perhaps a little bit too much QuickTime event stuff in what they showed, but I do think that was just because they happened to show one of the more kind of crazy events happening that required a lot of QuickTime events, and they are meant to just be, the action cinematics and just add a little bit of player interaction to them, rather than like that taking away what would have otherwise been like a boss battle or some like crazy way you can use your moves. I think what they did show of you actually like playing and doing the moves yourself seems really good. It seems like they've nailed the swinging around the city, which is something they got really right in that PlayStation 2 Spider-Man 2 game. And it seems like that was a big thing that they wanted to like almost kind of copy in a way almost from that game. And then the combat seems really cool, and I think a lot of that is just because Spider-Man is such a cool character when it comes to the way he fights, because he's acrobatic, but he's also strong, and then he has the whole spider gimmick of that he can, cling to walls, it gives him extra acrobatics, plus the web shooters, and just what you can do with them. It seems really awesome, basically, what they showed. So, I definitely would like to see, I suppose, some gameplay of you just start, find like a side quest, and just see what the structure of the game is. Like, how do you go about doing like main missions, like, and what's the story like? But in general, this seems like it's definitely one of the best games shown at this E3. I placed it a little bit lower just because, the Marvel stuff I definitely like, but it's not like my favorite stuff that comes out. So yeah, that's my number 7, and we'll move on to number 6. So my number 6 is Sea of Thieves. I had this on my list, just like Spider-Man last year, quite highly as well. I think it's lower this year than it was before. This game's coming out early 2018. Now they did show more of this game this time out, in that they basically showed like what seemed to be like a full side quest that was potentially part of a main quest by the end in what happened. The only thing with this game is just how big it actually is. I think it's what they've shown officially doesn't really make it massively clearer the scope of this game. In that they're just out in this specific part of the ocean. They come to this one island and they do some really cool stuff with regards to how the game works. In that you see the guy with the kind of the gun, shooting everyone, and swimming under the water and like solving the puzzle in there. That all seems really, really cool with the riddles and so on. It was just, how did they first find out about that specific location? What are the main quests in this game? How do you start? What's the story? Just what is the full idea of this game? What is a like cycle of play with this game is what I'm not quite sure of just yet. So I'm eager to see when they announced maybe potentially like an open beta or something like that for this game, how it actually works. I feel like I'm pretty sold on this game, even without all of that information, because the idea of basically, you know, like Destiny but with pirates almost is like the structure of this game. Seems really, really cool to me, and it just is a lot of the specifics that they need to get right, but I like the art style, the kind of humor that they seem to have with this game as well. And, you know, I think it says something that a lot of pirate games are happening now. We had that other one, was it Skull and Bones, announced that I think was Ubisoft, or was it EA? I can't really remember. That was a more, like, serious focused pirate game. But I think Sea of Thieves, for me, is the one that has the most attention for me. So yeah, moving into the top 5. Number 5 is Star Wars Battlefront 2, which is coming out November 17th, 2017. I played the beta for Battlefront 1, and after that chose not to get the game because I felt it was extremely limited in that it was only original trilogy content. There was no single player stuff in the game really at all, and the DLC was primarily just Force Awakens stuff. So I was really, really happy to see that they basically showcased this game with prequel stuff. They showed Darth Maul, Naboo, Theed Palace, Trade Federation battle droids versus like clone troopers, and that sold me, because that is the Star Wars that like I really like. I like the original trilogy as well, but you know, the prequels for me is the really cool thing to me, because especially with like Battlefront and stuff like that, I think the clones are much better like soldiers than the stormtroopers. So I think it's actually cooler to play as the clone troopers rather than anything else. And then like the separatist, you know, battle droids and stuff like that seems like also fun as well. So the map that they showed was really cool. What they showed, the heroes like Rey and Darth Maul and so on, seemed really good. There is the single player campaign this time out, which I'm glad is in there. I don't know how invested I'm necessarily going to be in the story, but I like that there is single player content in this game. The only thing with this game, I think, is just how much prequel stuff is there. Like, is there like a, like how many maps are there that are from the prequel kind of era is kind of, I suppose, what I'm asking here. What other, hero characters are there? Can you play as Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, or like, which characters aren't included, basically, that you would almost expect to be included? That's kind of what I want. I hope this isn't just a case of like it's there's only like 2 or 3 prequel maps. I want there to be like a good amount of maps covering all eras of Star Wars. So yeah, I think this game seems like a really good sequel. They've improved. They made a big deal in the press conference at EA about, we listened to what you guys said. You wanted single player stuff. You wanted a story. That's what we're giving you. And I suppose to some degree it was very similar with the prequel stuff. They're aware that people wanted prequel stuff, and they put it in, and they showcased it with prequel stuff. And I'm glad they did that. So that's my number 5. Number 4, Mario Odyssey. Or is it Super Mario Odyssey? Is it just Mario Odyssey? I keep forgetting. October 27th, 2017 for this one. I'm definitely going to get this. I think that's the main thing. Like, just the trailer they showed, the gameplay they showed, it was good enough that I'm just like, yeah, I'm sold on this. I don't need to watch all of this coverage of this game. That's kind of the way I am with Mario games. It tends to just be like, okay, I've seen a little bit of this. It looks really solid. I'm going to get this. I don't need to see a ton of content for it. It's just that, like, I think with Mario, it's a simple enough like concept of what the game is. It's just, platformer with power-ups. You don't need to do a lot to sell me on one of those games. Like, they don't excite me massively, But I'm going to have a ton of fun playing this game when it comes out. And I think that's all there really is to talk about with Mario Odyssey. The possession mechanic with the hatch seems very, very fun. Just the layout of like the two currency systems of like you have one kind of worldwide currency system and then a currency exclusive to that place, and the fact that you can buy kind of outfits seems like really, really cool. With the kind of open world element to the worlds, with all the moons that you have to collect. I think the only thing they need to kind of, I suppose, communicate is just how many of these worlds is there? How big is this game? In terms of how long is it going to be? But yeah, that's my number 4 pick, Mario Odyssey for the Switch. Definitely going to be a huge game for Nintendo, and for what I've seen, everyone has liked what they've seen of this game. So yeah, number 3, Destiny 2, coming out September 6th, 2017, I believe. They changed the date from like the 8th to the 6th, I believe. But yeah, I'm going to be getting this for Xbox One. I'm a huge Destiny 1 fan, as probably most of you know, even though I don't cover a massive amount of video game stuff on my channel. And even though the Destiny 2, it wasn't announced at E3, it was announced in Bungie's own event prior to this. I wanted to show it. I wanted to talk about it here because it is definitely one of my most hyped games coming out in the next few months, because I'm such a Destiny fan. And look, I get what people are saying, that it seems like it's just kind of more of the same. They've made some improvements, and they're trying to fix a lot of those things, but it still looks like Destiny. It's one of those cases where like it's meant to be Destiny. Like there's only so much you can do. Like you can't just suddenly say that like, oh, the enemies that you fought in the first game just don't exist anymore, because it is a story-driven universe. Like you can't just say the Fallen are gone because we have to do new stuff. Equally, you can't so simply just introduce a complete new enemy without giving tons of story context. Hence why the Cabal are the main enemies in this one. Initially, at least. You know, I don't think they've been perfect with the communication on this, in that, you know, stuff like the release date being separate for the PC to everything else, the PC obviously being at 60 frames per second, whereas the consoles are locked to 30, is, I get why that frustrates some people. I prefer it to be 60, but if it's 30, but it allows them to do all this crazy AI stuff, and the amount of like enemies that can be on screen and so on, the amount of physics interactions that can happen is better because they have the lower frame rate, then fine. But for me, it's stuff like some of what Luke Smith has kind of come out and said about like story stuff from Destiny 1, and how he's kind of dismissed a lot of the stuff that people are interested in, like the Exo Stranger, what the darkness is. He's just been a little bit dismissive of that. And then I think just stuff that has been constant complaints about Destiny 1 that they've kind of ignored again, like, oh yeah, there'll be no ranked competitive mode at launch, at least, and we don't really have anything initial to say about that. That's for sure a little bit frustrating. And then with regard to E3, the focus of course was on what the PlayStation 4 exclusives are, which is an ongoing thing within the community that I don't think anyone really likes this anymore, because what it means is that, okay, PlayStation 4 players get some exclusive stuff, but they don't then get to play that exclusive stuff with everyone else, because obviously there's only so much you can do with it. You can't ever make that strike, the Nightfall strike for instance, because then like Xbox people can't play it because they don't have that strike. So it's one of these things where like the exclusivity on that strike, what it ends up kind of doing is just, oh yeah, you can play this on the most easy basic mode, but you'll never get the, I suppose, like absolute max out of it. You'll never be playing this at like the absolute highest, like light level, pretty much. You know, and then I think with the exclusives, the one thing I am glad about is that they haven't gone overboard. That it's basically just more of the same. It's a Crucible map, a strike, a weapon, and then some armor sets. Like, that's fine. There's so much armor in this game. There's so many other weapons that PlayStation just having that one weapon, which seems to be a sniper rifle, which is like, oh, okay, with the new power weapon thing, that seems really cool. But it's not the end of the world, in that we will get that strike at some point. The Crucible map, maybe it's not the best Crucible map, but we still will have a lot of other ones. I do, again, with this game, like all of the other ones, a lot will depend on when the news actually comes out, how many strikes are in the game, how many missions are in the game. The stuff that basically turned a lot of people off Destiny 1, when those numbers start to come out for Destiny 2, how will that look when you have to exclude that PlayStation 4 strike from all the other consoles? That's going to be a big thing. But overall, I'm really, really excited for this game. From what I've seen, the subtle changes that they've made with all the classes and just the new focus on story and what they're doing seems really good. And then they still have the fact that they haven't shown a lot of the like adventure stuff, the kind of side questy type stuff, lost sectors, how exactly the extended patrol mode stuff works. That's going to be really fun to see when it comes out. So I'll be playing a ton of this when it comes out, but don't want to go overboard on the Destiny talk right now. So yeah, from there we move into my number 2 pick, which is going to be Xenoblade Chronicles 2, coming out holiday 2017. And just the announcement at the end of the trailer that it was coming out holiday 2017 was a big thing. Everyone expected this game to be delayed, and so it was really cool to see that it wasn't, and that it's going to be out this year. I like the story, and I've played a decent amount of the first Chronicles game. I played X, but kind of bounced off it like after midway through the game, just because there wasn't much of a story to it, and it was very much completely reliant on you just wanting to explore, which was cool. But that kind of ran out of steam after a while, just because there really wasn't much of a story to the game. So this being a return to story-focused content, while also still having that big world to explore, seems like a really good blend. I like that they showed off the British voice actors, which is definitely a cool part of the first game. And the system of just the idea of like they're called like blades and drivers, of just like that you have your character and then you choose these other characters who are basically like living swords to act as like the weapons that they have, and you can have like multiple swords for each driver that represent like a different element and so on. That seems really cool, especially depending on if they go into character development and kind of exploring the nature of like as a living being what one of these kind of blades actually is. So yeah, I don't want to talk too much about this. The gameplay they showed seems really good with regards to just I like the Xenoblade fighting system, and I think it looks like it's really good here as well. Which leads me to my number 1 pick from E3 2017, which was perhaps for some people it's not the most exciting, or like, wow, you picked that as number 1? This game's already out. That's Rocket League being announced for the Nintendo Switch, coming out holiday 2017. The reason I chose this is because, honestly, watching all of the conferences this year, this announcement, Rocket League on Switch, was pretty much one of the only ones that made me just kind of go yes and kind of like fist pump and just be like, I'm so excited for this game to come out on Switch, to play Rocket League portably and see how the game works on the Nintendo console. Just to see this game that has been so like, I suppose, entrenched in kind of everything but Nintendo now being announced for a Nintendo console was so good to see. And that they're also putting in some Nintendo-focused items, the Mario hat, Luigi hat, and then especially what the Nintendo cars are going to be, the car bodies are going to be. I'm really excited to see what they do with those. Now, of course, there are some, I suppose, technical questions that people have with regards to like the Psyonix are aiming for like 60 frames per second is what they're aiming for, because I think that is so integral to what Rocket League is, and how like when you're playing online, it is so important, like split second timing, exact movements. You need the 60 frames per second to make that work, especially with cross network play. It kind of is almost basically a requirement. Otherwise, like if you're playing on Nintendo, will be a complete disadvantage. The only limitation that the Switch seems to have is that they're kind of aiming for 720p rather than 1080p. Which is, for me, is fine. I don't really mind that too much. The frames per second is definitely what's important. They have to get 60 for this game to work properly. And then the only other real question I have is just how are they going to be doing the stuff like the crates, the keys, and trading in general? Like, is that going to work, or is it going to be limited on Nintendo, or what? I assume it'll just be the same, that you can just buy keys, but you'll be buying them from the eShop this time out. You'll get crates, you can open them, and then you can trade with people if you want to, and it'll just be the exact same. But I'm eager to see if they get everything exactly spot on. But absolutely, this game, even though I have Rocket League on Xbox One and play it a ton, I'm so excited for it to be on Switch. Don't ask me why I'm this excited, but it felt like I had to put this as number one, and I'm just so excited for it. But yeah, that's my thoughts on E3 2017. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on my list, and also what your favorite announcements were. Do you agree with some of the ones on my list, or what are some of the other games that you really noticed and were hyped about? But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.